Detective Sarah Mitchell pressed her phone against her ear, sitting in the familiar corner booth of Romano's coffee house, where she had spent countless evenings waiting for her husband Marcus to finish his so-called late nights at the office. Through the rain-streaked window, she watched her husband of 20 years kiss a blonde woman who couldn't have been older than their daughter Emma outside the prestigious Riverside Hotel across the street. "Baby, I'm telling you, this Henderson merger is absolutely eating my life alive." Marcus's voice poured through the speaker with that smooth confidence that had charmed her back in college. His slight southern drawl, the same one that had made her fall in love with him 21 years ago, now sounded calculated and rehearsed. "This is definitely going to be another late night. You know how these massive corporate deals work. Sweetheart, the lawyers are demanding impossible timelines, and the board is breathing down our necks. Trust me, if there was any way to get home to you tonight, I would take it." Sarah's coffee cup scraped against the porcelain saucer as her hands began to tremble uncontrollably. 20 years of marriage, 2 decades of trust, and she had believed every single lie this man had told her. Marcus Mitchell, her millionaire ex-husband, as of this very moment in her mind, stood confidently in the autumn rain, helping a young blonde woman into a taxi that probably cost more per ride than most people spent on groceries in a week. The woman wore a designer coat that Sarah recognized from the windows of boutiques she had always walked past but never entered, thinking they were too expensive for a police detective's budget. Apparently, they weren't too expensive for a police detective's husband to buy for his mistress using money from their joint savings account. "Sarah, you still there?" "Baby!" Marcus's voice carried that hint of impatience he got when he thought she wasn't paying attention to his elaborate explanations. "I'm here," she managed to say, her 15 years of detective training automatically keeping her voice level and professional even as her world collapsed around her. "Just tired, I guess. Long day at the precinct." "Well, get some rest. Beautiful. I'll try my absolute best not to wake you when I finally drag myself home. These Henderson people are relentless, but the commission from this deal is going to set us up for life. Maybe we can finally take that trip to Italy you've been talking about." Italy. They had been planning that trip for 5 years, always postponing it because Marcus claimed they needed to save more money, be more financially responsible. Think about Emma's college expenses. Meanwhile, he was apparently funding an entirely separate lifestyle for a woman young enough to be his daughter. The call ended with Marcus's usual, "Love you, sweetheart," and Sarah watched her husband of 20 years help his mistress into the taxi with the kind of gentle attentiveness he hadn't shown her in months. Maybe years. The blonde woman laughed at something Marcus said, throwing her head back in a gesture of pure joy that made Sarah's heart ache with recognition. She remembered feeling that kind of happiness with Marcus once upon a time. Her phone immediately buzzed with a text message from Marcus. "Love you so much, baby. Don't wait up for me tonight. This Henderson thing is going to keep me here until at least midnight. Maybe later. Sweet dreams." Sarah stared at the message for a long moment, then whispered to herself in the empty coffee shop, "Time to go undercover in my own marriage." The evening crowd at Romano's buzzed with normal life around her. Young couples sharing desserts and planning futures together, business associates celebrating successful deals over expensive wine, families with teenage children arguing about weekend plans, all of them living authentic lives where the people they loved actually were who they claimed to be. Sarah envied every single one of them. She pulled out her leather notebook, the same one she used for complex fraud investigations, and began writing with the methodical precision that had made her one of the department's most successful detectives. 20 years of marriage was about to become a criminal case, and Detective Sarah Mitchell never approached a case without proper documentation. Marcus Anthony Mitchell, age 48, Chief Financial Officer at Henderson Industries. Annual salary $2.5 million plus bonuses. Recent behavioral changes, working late 4 nights per week for the past 6 months. Constantly checking his phone during conversations. Providing elaborate explanations for simple questions. And purchasing expensive gifts that seemed designed to deflect suspicion rather than express genuine affection. The woman appeared to be in her late 20s, professionally dressed in a way that suggested either significant personal wealth or someone willing to spend substantial money on her appearance. She moved with the confident grace of someone accustomed to being taken care of, someone who had never worried about mortgage payments or grocery budgets or whether she could afford to repair her car when it broke down. Sarah made a mental note to run background checks on every young woman associated with Henderson Industries, starting with names like Crystal, Brittany, Madison, or any other name that sounded like it belonged to someone born after Sarah had already been married for several years. Her phone rang again, and Emma's name appeared on the screen. Her 19-year-old daughter was calling from her sophomore year at Northwestern University, probably between study sessions for her pre-law courses. "Mom, you sound really weird. Is everything okay? Did something happen at work?" Sarah looked out the window toward the spot where Marcus had been standing just minutes before and felt the crushing weight of having to protect her daughter from the truth about her father, at least until Sarah had gathered enough evidence to present a complete picture. Just a long day investigating some complicated fraud cases. "Sweetie, you know how these financial crimes can get really complex and emotionally draining. How are your classes going?" "They're good, but Mom, I'm actually kind of worried about you and Dad. When I called home last weekend, Dad seemed really distracted and kept checking his phone every few minutes. And when I asked him about work, he gave me this really long, complicated explanation about mergers and acquisitions that didn't really make sense. It felt like he was trying too hard to convince me of something." Sarah's daughter had inherited both her mother's investigative instincts and her father's sharp, analytical mind. The combination made her remarkably perceptive about people's motivations and inconsistencies in their stories. "Your father has been under enormous pressure with this Henderson Industries merger. You know how he gets when he's stressed about work." "I guess. But Mom, there's something else. Last Saturday night when I called around 10 o'clock, some woman answered Dad's phone." Sarah felt like someone had punched her directly in the stomach. Her coffee cup froze halfway to her lips as she processed what Emma had just told her. "What did you say? Some woman answered Dad's phone. When I asked to speak to him, she got all flustered and said something like, 'Oh my God, I'm so sorry.' And then there was this weird pause before Dad got on the line. He said it was his assistant working late on the Henderson project. But Mom, what kind of assistant answers her boss's personal phone at 10 at night on a Saturday? What did she sound like? Really young. Like, really, right, really young. And she had this kind of high-pitched voice with that way of talking where everything sounds like a question. You know what I mean? Plus, she giggled nervously before she hung up and got Dad, which seemed really unprofessional for someone who's supposed to be his business assistant. Sarah felt her entire world shifting underneath her feet. How long had this been going on? How many signs had she missed while she was busy solving other people's crimes and trusting that her own husband was exactly who he claimed to be? "Did you mention this conversation to your father?" "No. I figured it was just some work thing, and I didn't want to make it weird. But combined with all the expensive presents he's been buying you lately, and the way he's been acting so guilty and overcompensating for something." "Mom, I've watched enough crime shows to recognize when someone's behavior pattern changes dramatically." Smart girl. Too smart. Sarah's detective instincts had been trying to alert her to Marcus's deception for months, but 20 years of marriage, love, and trust had made her ignore the warning signs that she would have spotted immediately if she'd been investigating someone else's husband. "Emma, I want you to focus on your studies and not worry about your parents' marriage. Your father and I are both adults, and we can handle whatever challenges we're facing. Promise me you'll take care of yourself. Mom, you spend so much time taking care of everyone else that sometimes I worry you forget to pay attention to your own needs." After ending the call with Emma, Sarah sat alone in the coffee shop for another hour, watching the hotel entrance and counting the number of married men who entered with women who were obviously not their wives. The Riverside Hotel apparently catered to a very specific clientele of wealthy professionals conducting very specific types of business meetings. She pulled up their joint banking app on her phone and began scrolling through recent transactions with the practiced eye of someone who investigated financial fraud for a living. What she found made her stomach turn with a combination of rage and nausea. Multiple transfers to something called Crystal Summers Consulting over the past 6 months, totaling nearly $50,000. Crystal Summers. So now she had a name to go with the blonde hair and designer coat. Additional charges at restaurants Sarah had never been to, hotels in cities where Marcus claimed to be attending business conferences, and jewelry stores where he had apparently become a frequent and valued customer. The pattern was unmistakable systematic theft from joint marital assets to fund an extramarital affair. The rain stopped while Sarah sat in the coffee shop, and the city lights began reflecting off the wet pavement like scattered diamonds. Her 20-year marriage was officially over, she realized, but her investigation was just beginning. She had the professional skills, the legal resources, and now the personal motivation to uncover every single lie Marcus had told her over the past months or years. As she gathered her purse and jacket to leave, Sarah realized something unexpected was happening inside her chest. For the first time in years, possibly decades, she felt completely alive, alert, focused, energized by challenge rather than defeated by betrayal. The pain of Marcus's deception cut deeper than anything she had ever experienced, but the intellectual challenge of investigating his crimes gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since her early days as a detective. This was what she was meant to do: uncover the truth, gather evidence, build cases, and ensure that justice was served. She walked to her car through the autumn evening, her heels clicking decisively on the wet sidewalk, and began mentally planning her next investigative steps. Tomorrow morning, she would begin the most important case of her career, discovering exactly who her husband really was and what he had done with their shared life savings. The young woman Marcus had been kissing had absolutely no idea that she was now being investigated by one of the city's most successful fraud detectives. She probably thought she was so clever, stealing another woman's husband while living off that woman's money. What she didn't know was that Detective Sarah Mitchell had never lost a case in 15 years of police work, and she had no intention of starting now. 3 hours earlier that same morning, Sarah had been standing in her pristine suburban kitchen making coffee and listening to Marcus explain his busy day while he checked his phone approximately every 30 seconds with the nervous energy of someone expecting important communications. "Baby, I'm telling you, this Henderson merger is absolutely consuming every minute of my life," Marcus said, straightening his Italian silk tie in the hallway mirror that reflected their perfectly coordinated home decor. Everything in their house had been chosen to project success, stability, and refined taste to visitors who might judge their lifestyle. "This is definitely going to be another late night. Probably won't be home until after midnight. The legal team is demanding revisions to contracts that were supposedly finalized weeks ago. That's the fourth late night this week. Marcus," Sarah poured cream into her coffee, noting how her husband avoided making direct eye contact while delivering his explanation. In 15 years of interrogating suspects, she had learned that people who were telling the truth didn't need to rehearse their eye contact patterns. "You know exactly how these massive corporate deals work. Sweetheart, trust me, if there was any possible way to get home to have dinner with my beautiful wife, I would take it in a heartbeat." His phone buzzed against the granite countertop with an incoming text message. The screen lit up briefly before Marcus quickly grabbed the device and silenced it. But Sarah's detective training had taught her to notice details even when she didn't particularly want to. The name Crystal appeared on the screen, along with a heart emoji and what looked like the beginning of a message that said, "Can't wait to see you tonight." "Who's Crystal?" Sarah asked casually, taking a sip of her coffee and watching Marcus's reaction with the practiced observation skills she used during suspect interviews. "Crystal O. She's one of the outside consultants working on the Henderson project. Marketing specialist, I think. Very thorough. Very professional." Marcus grabbed his phone and shoved it deep into his jacket pocket with slightly more force than the action required. "She calls about every little detail of the campaign strategy. These young consultants think their work is the most important thing in the entire world." Young. Sarah filed that particular word choice away for future reference and consideration. "She sounds very dedicated to her job." "Yeah, maybe a little too dedicated, if you ask me. These millennials don't seem to understand the concept of work-life balance. Everything is urgent. Everything needs immediate attention. Everything requires another meeting or phone call." Emma wandered into the kitchen wearing her old high school pajamas, home for a long weekend visit from Northwestern University. She mumbled something that might have been "good morning" to both parents and poured herself a large glass of orange juice while scrolling through social media on her phone. "Dad, you've been working really late a lot recently," Emma observed without looking up from her screen. "Are you sure you're not working too hard? Got to pay for that expensive Northwestern education somehow. Princess?" Marcus kissed the top of Emma's head with genuine paternal affection. "Besides, your mom deserves the absolute best that money can buy. Speaking of which, He walked to his leather briefcase and pulled out a small velvet jewelry box, presenting it to Sarah with a flourish that seemed slightly theatrical for a Tuesday morning in their kitchen. Marcus, what is this? It's not our anniversary or my birthday? Do I need a special occasion to spoil the woman I love? He wrapped his arms around Sarah from behind while she opened the box to reveal a diamond necklace that must have cost at least $10,000. 20 years of putting up with my long hours and stressful career deserve some serious appreciation. Sarah fingered the delicate platinum chain and flawless diamonds, recognizing quality jewelry when she saw it. This wasn't a spontaneous romantic gesture. This was an expensive apology for something she didn't even know about yet. It's absolutely gorgeous. Marcus, thank you so much. Emma rolled her eyes dramatically. You guys are so weird with your random romantic gestures. It's like you're still trying to impress each other after 20 years of marriage. Weird in the best possible way, Marcus said, but his phone buzzed again inside his jacket pocket, and his attention immediately shifted away from his wife and daughter toward whatever message he had just received. I really should get going if I want to beat the morning traffic. This Henderson project waits for no one. He kissed Sarah goodbye with the same brief, familiar gesture he had given her nearly every morning for 2 decades, grabbed his briefcase, and headed toward the garage where his BMW sedan was parked next to Sarah's more modest Honda. As soon as Marcus's car pulled out of their circular driveway, Emma turned to her mother with the direct gaze she had inherited from both parents. Mom, is Dad having some kind of midlife crisis or something? What makes you say that, sweetheart? Well, let's see. He bought you that ridiculously expensive car last month. Now he's giving you diamond necklaces on random Tuesday mornings? He's working all the time, and when he is home, he seems distracted and keeps checking his phone constantly. Plus, he keeps talking about these young consultants and how hard they work and how dedicated they are to their careers. Sarah's 19-year-old daughter was significantly more perceptive than Sarah had given her credit for. Emma had noticed behavioral patterns and changes that Sarah herself had been rationalizing away for months. Your father is under enormous pressure at work with this merger. Sometimes people cope with stress by working longer hours and trying to compensate in other areas of their lives. I guess that makes sense. But Mom, there's something else I probably should have mentioned earlier. Emma put down her orange juice and looked directly at her mother. Last weekend, when I called Dad's phone around 10 at night on Saturday, some woman answered. Sarah's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. What did you say? Some woman answered his phone. She sounded really young and kind of nervous. When I asked to speak to Dad, she got all flustered and said something like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And then there was this weird pause before Dad got on the line. What did your father say about it? He said it was his assistant working late on some urgent Henderson project. But Mom, what kind of assistant answers her boss's personal phone at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night? And why would she sound so nervous and giggly about it? What did she sound like? Really young, like college-age young. And she had this high-pitched voice where everything sounds like a question. You know that way some young women talk? Plus, she giggled before hanging up and getting Dad, which seemed totally unprofessional for someone who's supposed to be his business assistant. Sarah felt the familiar sensation of puzzle pieces clicking together in her mind. The same feeling she got when a complex fraud case started making sense. All those late nights, expensive gifts, business trips, and elaborate explanations suddenly formed a pattern that was impossible to ignore. Did you mention this phone call to your father? No, I figured it was just some work situation, and I didn't want to make things awkward. But now with all these expensive presents and the way he's been acting so guilty about something, Emma shrugged with the casual wisdom of someone who had grown up watching detective shows. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but it feels like he's overcompensating for something. Smart girl. Brilliant girl. Sarah's maternal instincts had been trying to tell her something was wrong for months, but she had ignored those instincts because trust, loyalty, and 20 years of marriage had made her blind to deception that now seemed obvious. After Emma left for her morning jog around their affluent neighborhood, Sarah sat alone in the kitchen that Marcus's substantial salary had renovated twice in the past decade. Granite countertops imported from Italy, professional-grade appliances that cost more than most people's cars, a breakfast nook overlooking their perfectly landscaped backyard with its designer pool and outdoor entertainment area. All of it paid for by Henderson Industries, where her millionaire ex-husband apparently employed young female consultants who answered his personal phone at 10 p.m. on Saturday nights and giggled nervously when his daughter called. She walked upstairs to Marcus's home office, a room she had always respected as his private professional space where he conducted important business calls and reviewed confidential financial documents. Today, privacy was a luxury Marcus had forfeited through his own choices. The desk drawers were locked, but Sarah had learned basic lockpicking during her police academy training 15 years ago. The skills had proven useful for investigating crime scenes where suspects had tried to hide evidence behind simple household locks. Inside the bottom drawer, she discovered credit card statements for accounts she had never known existed, charges at expensive restaurants she had never been to, luxury hotels in cities where Marcus claimed to be attending business conferences, and jewelry stores where he had apparently become a frequent and valued customer over the past 18 months. One particular receipt made her hands shake with rage. Tiffany and Company, $15,000. Purchased on the exact same day Marcus had told her that her mother's antique necklace had been stolen from his car during a supposed break-in at the Henderson Industries parking garage. She had cried over losing that necklace. It had been her grandmother's engagement gift, passed down through 3 generations of women in her family, and Sarah had sobbed in Marcus's arms while he comforted her and promised they would increase their insurance coverage and be more careful about leaving valuables in their cars. Her mother's irreplaceable family heirloom hadn't been stolen by random criminals. Marcus had given it to another woman. Sarah photographed every document with her phone, automatically falling back on her detective training for evidence collection and documentation. She was building a case against her own husband, gathering proof of systematic deception that went far beyond simple marital infidelity. She was still photographing financial records when she heard Marcus's BMW in the driveway. He wasn't supposed to be home for hours. Sarah quickly returned everything to its original position, relocked the desk drawers, and was folding laundry in their master bedroom when Marcus appeared in the doorway, carrying his laptop charger. "Forget something?" she asked with casual friendliness, continuing to sort his expensive shirts and ties. "Left my laptop charger on the nightstand. Can't survive a full day of meetings without it?" He kissed her forehead with automatic affection. "You look absolutely beautiful today, by the way. That color is perfect on you." "Thank you, sweetheart. I mean it. Sarah, you're still the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my entire life." If she hadn't just discovered evidence of his systematic financial fraud and extramarital affair, the compliment might have meant something genuine. Instead, it felt like another calculated manipulation, another way to keep her from asking inconvenient questions about their joint finances and his increasingly frequent absences. "I love you so much," Marcus said, grabbing his charger from the nightstand where it had been sitting in plain sight. "I love you too," she replied automatically, the words feeling strange and bitter in her mouth. But as she watched her husband leave for the second time that morning, Sarah realized she was no longer certain what love actually meant. Was it 20 years of shared history and experiences? Was it trust, loyalty, and mutual respect? Or was it just comfortable habit, expensive gifts designed to mask betrayal, and the fear of starting over after building an entire adult life with someone who might be a complete stranger? Her phone buzzed with a text message from her partner at the police station. "Sarah, we just caught a new case that's going to interest you. High net worth executive, systematic financial fraud, missing marital assets, and a wife who had no idea what was happening." Sound familiar? Too familiar. Detective Sarah Mitchell was about to investigate the most important fraud case of her 15-year career. And this time, she was both the investigating officer and the primary victim. The irony was almost overwhelming. But Sarah had learned long ago that life rarely followed the neat, logical patterns that people expected. Sometimes the person you trusted most was the person who betrayed you most completely. Sometimes the skills you used to solve other people's problems were exactly the skills you needed to solve your own. Marcus had no idea that his wife was one of the department's most successful financial crime investigators. He had no idea that Detective Sarah Mitchell had never lost a fraud case in 15 years of police work. And he had no idea that she was about to open an investigation that would destroy his carefully constructed double life and expose every lie he had told over the past months or years. The hunt for the truth was officially beginning. That Saturday evening, Sarah arrived at Milano's restaurant 20 minutes before her scheduled dinner reservation with Marcus. She needed time to observe the environment, assess the situation, and prepare mentally for what might very well be their final meal together as a married couple. Milano's was one of the city's most prestigious establishments, the kind of place where corporate executives celebrated major deals and wealthy couples marked important anniversaries. The dining room buzzed with Saturday night energy elegant couples sharing intimate conversations over candlelight, extended families celebrating special occasions, business associates closing million-dollar agreements over bottles of wine that cost more than most people's monthly salaries. Sarah chose a table with a clear view of both the main entrance and the hallway leading to the restrooms, positioning herself like the experienced detective she was. 15 years of investigating criminal behavior had taught her that restaurants were often where people revealed their true character, especially when they thought they weren't being observed. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus. Running about 15 minutes late. Beautiful. Go ahead and order that Cabernet Sauvignon we love. This Henderson meeting is taking forever, but I'll be there soon. Can't wait to see you. Translation: he was finishing whatever he had been doing with Crystal all afternoon and needed a few extra minutes to transition from his role as devoted lover back to his performance as faithful husband. Sarah ordered a bottle of 2018 Cabernet Sauvignon, the same wine they had shared on their very first date 21 years ago, when Marcus was a charming business school graduate and she was a rookie police officer who believed that love could conquer any obstacle. Tonight felt like the end of their story, so it seemed appropriate to acknowledge how it had begun. She was reviewing the menu and checking her phone when she heard a familiar voice drifting from the direction of the ladies' restroom. The tone was high-pitched and artificially sweet, with that affected Valley Girl inflection that made every statement sound like a question even when the speaker was making definitive declarations. Mom, I'm totally telling you, he's absolutely going to leave her really soon. Like, probably within the next few months once this big business deal is finished. Sarah's blood immediately turned to ice in her veins. She carefully placed her menu on the table and walked toward the restroom area, staying just outside the entrance where she could hear the conversation clearly without being seen by whoever was speaking. She's basically this super boring suburban housewife who literally has no clue what's happening in her own marriage. Like, she goes to work every day at her little police job and comes home and cooks dinner and does laundry like it's 1950 or something. Little police job. 15 years of solving complex financial fraud cases, putting white-collar criminals behind bars, and protecting innocent victims from sophisticated scams. And this child thought Sarah's career was a cute hobby. He bought me this absolutely amazing diamond necklace last week, told her it was stolen from his car. She's so incredibly gullible. It's actually kind of sad. Like, who believes that expensive jewelry just gets stolen from a parked car? But she totally bought the whole story and even cried about it. Sarah's mother's necklace, the family heirloom that had been passed down through 3 generations of strong women. She had sobbed in Marcus's arms over losing that irreplaceable connection to her grandmother. While he held her and promised they would be more careful about security in the future. No, Mom, I'm seriously not worried about her finding out anything. She's completely and totally clueless about everything. Marcus says she's so focused on chasing criminals at work that she doesn't pay any attention to what's happening at home. Can you actually believe she's like 45 years old and still running around playing cops and robbers? It's kind of pathetic when you think about it. Playing cops and robbers, Sarah had dedicated her adult life to protecting people from exactly the kind of predator Marcus had turned out to be, and his mistress thought it was an amusing game. He's definitely going to tell her everything after this Henderson deal closes in a few weeks. Then we can finally be together for real, like an actual couple instead of having to sneak around all the time. He already picked out my engagement ring. It's like 3 carats and totally gorgeous. He says it cost more than her car. Engagement ring, purchased with money stolen from their joint savings account. No doubt. Money that Sarah had earned through years of dangerous police work while Marcus built his corporate career on her financial support and emotional labor. I know. Right. She has absolutely no idea that he's been supporting my entire lifestyle for months and months. My apartment, my car, my shopping, my gym membership, literally everything comes from their joint accounts. And she just goes to work every day like nothing's happening. It's actually kind of hilarious how oblivious she is. Sarah's hands clenched into fists as she listened to this young woman describe how she had been living off stolen marital assets while simultaneously mocking the woman she was robbing. The level of entitlement and narcissism was staggering. Okay, Mom, I totally have to go now. Marcus is meeting me here in like 10 minutes, and then we're having dinner with his boring wife. I know it sounds super weird, but he says we have to keep up appearances until the divorce. He wants me to see what I'm competing with. And honestly, I'm not worried. Dinner with his boring wife. Sarah was about to become unwitting entertainment, the clueless third wheel in her own marriage, while her husband and his mistress silently laughed at her naivety. She returned to her table just as Marcus walked through Milano's elegant front entrance. He looked handsome and successful in his charcoal gray suit, the same way he had looked when they first met at a university alumni event decades ago. But now Sarah could see the performance underneath the appearance, the calculated charm that masked a complete lack of genuine emotion. Sorry I'm late, baby. Henderson's lawyers are demanding impossible revisions to contracts that were supposedly finalized weeks ago. He kissed her cheek with practiced affection and sat down across from her. You look absolutely stunning tonight. That dress is perfect on you. Thank you. How was your day? Really exhausting and frustrating. These corporate mergers bring out the worst in everyone involved. But enough about my boring work problems. Tell me about your day. Did you solve any interesting crimes? Sarah almost laughed at the absurd irony of the question. Her day had included discovering Marcus's affair, photographing evidence of systematic financial fraud, and listening to his pregnant mistress mock their marriage. But Marcus was asking about her day like they were still a normal couple having a normal conversation about their normal lives. Very interesting. Actually, I learned some fascinating new information about people I thought I knew very well. Yeah, like what kind of information? Before Sarah could formulate an appropriate response, a young blonde woman walked past their table with the confident stride of someone who had never doubted her own attractiveness or worried about paying her own bills. She was stunning in that effortless way that significant amounts of money could buy perfect hair styled by expensive professionals, flawless makeup applied with expert skill, designer dress that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. Marcus's phone immediately buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced at the screen quickly, then turned the device face down on the white tablecloth with slightly more force than necessary. Marcus, do you think I'm boring? Sarah asked, studying his face for any sign of genuine emotion. What, baby? Where is this coming from? That's a crazy question. Just answer the question honestly. You're my wife. You're absolutely perfect, exactly the way you are. Perfect. The way someone might describe a valuable possession or a useful appliance. Not a person they were passionately in love with and couldn't imagine living without. What if I told you I was thinking about quitting the police force, maybe focusing on something completely different with my life? Marcus's face immediately lit up with an enthusiasm that seemed disproportionate to her hypothetical career change. Really, Sarah, that would be absolutely amazing for both of us. You've given so many years to that job already. You could focus on us, maybe do some traveling, take up new hobbies. Translation, quit your financially independent career so you're completely dependent on me and less likely to notice when money disappears from our joint accounts. What would I do with all my free time? Whatever makes you happy, sweetheart. You could shop more, redecorate the house however you want, maybe join the country club with some of the other wives. There are lots of charity organizations that would love to have someone with your skills and intelligence. The other wives, women who spent their days organizing fundraising luncheons while their husbands built business empires and maintained expensive mistresses. Women who had learned to look the other way as long as the credit cards continued working and the social status remained intact. Marcus, do you actually love me? Or do you just love the idea of being married to me? He reached across the table and took her hand in both of his, and his wedding ring caught the candlelight. 20 years of promises and commitments reduced to a piece of jewelry he probably removed whenever he was with Crystal. I love you, Sarah Mitchell. You're the mother of my daughter, my life partner, my best friend, and the most important person in my world. Mother, partner, friend, everything except the woman he desired above all others, the woman he chose every day, the woman he couldn't imagine living without. From across the restaurant came a familiar laugh, Crystal's voice, bright and careless and full of the kind of joy that comes from never having to worry about consequences. Sarah turned discreetly and saw her sitting alone at the bar, checking her phone and probably texting Marcus about their dinner plans. Sarah, You seem really distracted tonight. Is something bothering you? Did something happen at work? Sarah looked directly at her husband, her millionaire ex-husband. Though he didn't know that yet and realized she was looking at a complete stranger, the man she had married, trusted, and built an entire adult life with was a fictional character that Marcus had created to hide his true nature. I'm fine, just thinking about some cases I'm working on. More financial fraud investigations. Yes, it's really amazing how people think they can steal large amounts of money and never get caught. The arrogance and entitlement is absolutely incredible. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair, suddenly very interested in studying the wine list. Well, you're the best detective in the entire department. If anyone can catch these criminals, it's definitely you. I always catch them. Marcus, always. In 15 years, I've never had a case where the perpetrator got away with their crimes. She raised her wine glass in what appeared to be a romantic toast. To justice and truth. Marcus clinked his glass against hers with a smile that suggested he thought he had successfully navigated another, potentially dangerous conversation. He had absolutely no idea that Detective Sarah Mitchell had just officially opened the most important case of her career, and that he was the primary suspect. The investigation was about to begin in earnest. The next morning, Sarah woke up alone in their king-sized bed with its expensive Italian linens and custom-made headboard. Marcus had left early for another emergency board meeting, leaving only a hastily scribbled note on his pillow. Gone to the office to deal with Henderson crisis. Love you more than anything. Back late tonight? Sarah lay in bed for several minutes, staring at the cathedral ceiling of the master bedroom that Marcus's corporate salary had paid for, and began systematically planning her investigation with the methodical precision that had made her one of the department's most successful fraud detectives. 15 years of police work had taught her that the key to solving any complex criminal case was careful evidence collection, maintaining investigative cover, and never letting personal emotions compromise professional judgment. Today, she was going undercover in her own life. She started with a thorough search of Marcus's home office, this time conducting a complete forensic examination rather than the hurried evidence gathering she had done the previous morning. In full daylight, with coffee and determination, she methodically photographed financial documents that painted a clear picture of systematic theft and elaborate deception. The locked drawers yielded bank statements, credit card records, and financial transfers that revealed the true scope of Marcus's criminal activity. Over the past 18 months, he had systematically moved nearly $200,000 from their joint accounts to fund Crystal's lifestyle and his own secret preparations for a new life. Crystal's apartment rent $4,000 per month for a luxury penthouse in the city's most exclusive residential district. Car payments $800 monthly for a BMW convertible that Sarah recognized from her surveillance. Shopping allowances averaging $6,000 per month at high-end boutiques, department stores, and specialty retailers that Sarah had never even heard of. Restaurant bills expensive, dinners multiple times per week at establishments where Sarah had never been invited. Jewelry purchases tens of thousands of dollars spent at stores where Marcus had apparently become such a valued customer that they offered him private shopping appointments and special financing arrangements. Sarah photographed every document, every receipt, every financial record, building a comprehensive case file on her own husband. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was investigating narcissistic abuse and financial fraud as a professional specialization while living with both personally. Her phone rang, and Jake Rodriguez's name appeared on the screen. Her partner of 8 years had an intuitive understanding of when Sarah was dealing with complex cases that required emotional support as well as professional guidance. Sarah, you sound different today. Everything okay with you? Just working on a new case that's requiring some personal research and investigation? Want to talk about it? You know I'm always here if you need to bounce ideas around. Jake had been her partner since she made detective, and he had taught her to trust her instincts, follow financial trails methodically, and never ignore red flags just because she personally liked or trusted the suspect. Right now, she needed his professional advice more than ever, but she also needed to be careful about how much she revealed. Jake, hypothetically speaking, if you discovered that your spouse was systematically stealing money from joint accounts and having an extramarital affair, what would be your recommended course of action? Hypothetically, I'd immediately secure all financial assets, gather every piece of available evidence, and then I'd probably want to punch someone in the face. But since I'm a police officer, I'd probably just arrest them instead and let the legal system handle the punishment. What if the amount of stolen money was large enough to constitute grand theft rather than simple marital discord? Then it stops being a personal relationship problem and becomes a serious criminal matter that requires law enforcement intervention. Sarah, please tell me this is actually a hypothetical scenario. I'll call you back later when I have more information. She ended the call before Jake could ask more probing questions that she wasn't ready to answer completely. Right now, she needed to focus on evidence collection and investigation rather than emotional processing and support systems. Sarah drove across the city to Crystal's apartment building, a gleaming glass and steel tower in the financial district where penthouses sold for millions of dollars, and the parking garage was filled with luxury vehicles that cost more than most people's annual salaries. The building featured a uniformed doorman who greeted residents by name, a marble lobby with fresh flower arrangements, and security systems that suggested the kind of exclusivity that required substantial financial resources. She parked across the street in a position that allowed clear observation of the building's entrance and began professional surveillance of her husband's mistress. At 10:30 in the morning, Crystal emerged wearing workout clothes that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly grocery budget designer athletic wear, premium running shoes, and accessories that suggested someone who had never worried about the price of anything. Crystal drove her BMW convertible to an upscale fitness center where she spent 2 hours in what appeared to be personal training sessions with a professional instructor. The gym membership alone probably cost more per month than many people spent on rent. Lunch was at a trendy restaurant that Sarah recognized from Marcus's credit card statements, the same establishment where he had supposedly been having business meetings with Henderson Industries executives. Crystal met two other young women who appeared to be around her age, and they spent 3 hours drinking champagne, taking photographs for social media, and discussing what sounded like shopping plans and vacation destinations. Sarah watched through the restaurant's large windows as Crystal showed off her jewelry to her friends, including what appeared to be Sarah's grandmother's antique necklace sparkling around another woman's throat. The rage that surged through Sarah's chest was unexpected and overwhelming. She had to grip the steering wheel to prevent her hands from shaking with fury. That necklace had been her mother's most treasured possession, a family heirloom that connected 4 generations of women who had believed in love, commitment, and the sanctity of marriage. Now it decorated the neck of a child who thought stealing someone's husband was an achievement worthy of celebration. After lunch, Crystal spent 2 hours shopping in the city's most exclusive retail district, purchasing bags full of merchandise from Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Hermes, and other designers whose names Sarah recognized but whose stores she had never been able to afford on a police detective's salary. Every purchase was paid for with money Marcus had stolen from their joint savings account. At 4 o'clock, Crystal's phone rang, and even from across the street, Sarah could see the brilliant smile that illuminated her face. Marcus calling to arrange their evening together while Sarah sat at home, believing he was working late on important business projects. By 5 p.m., Sarah had documented Crystal's entire day, a lifestyle of complete leisure, funded entirely by stolen marital assets, financed by a man who complained when Sarah spent money on household necessities or personal expenses. She drove home through rush-hour traffic to their suburban neighborhood with its perfectly manicured lawns and expensive cars in every driveway, and realized she was looking at an elaborate crime scene. Every piece of furniture, every luxury appliance, every comfort and convenience had been paid for with money that partially belonged to her. Marcus had been systematically stealing her financial contributions to fund another woman's life of luxury. Sarah poured herself a glass of wine and sat in their designer kitchen, reviewing the day's photographic evidence with the analytical detachment she had learned to apply to complex criminal cases. She had enough documentation to file charges for financial fraud, identity theft, grand theft, and misuse of joint marital assets. But first, she needed to protect herself and her financial interests. She called Helen Morrison, a family law attorney who specialized in high-asset divorces involving financial malfeasance and hidden assets. Helen had a reputation for aggressive advocacy on behalf of wives who discovered their husbands had been systematically stealing from marital accounts. Helen, I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning. This is urgent and involves substantial financial fraud. Sarah, what's wrong? You sound like you're in crisis mode. My millionaire ex-husband is about to become exactly that, my ex-husband, And he's been stealing from our joint accounts for months to fund an extramarital affair with a woman young enough to be his daughter. How much money are we talking about? At least $200,000 that I can document so far. But I suspect there's much more that I haven't discovered yet. Jesus Christ. Sarah, are you absolutely certain about this? I'm a financial fraud investigator. Helen, I'm completely certain. Can you get to my office at 8 tomorrow morning? We need to move immediately to protect your remaining assets and file for emergency financial relief. After ending the call with Helen, Sarah opened her laptop and began conducting a comprehensive background investigation on Crystal Summers, using the same databases and resources she employed for criminal cases. Social media made modern investigations remarkably easy. Crystal had documented her entire lifestyle online, apparently never considering that someone might be systematically tracking her movements and expenditures. Instagram revealed 18 months of increasingly luxurious travel, designer clothing, expensive restaurants, and professional photography sessions. All of it recent, dating back precisely to when Marcus's financial transfers had begun. Before that period, Crystal's social media posts showed a much more modest lifestyle: chain restaurants, shopping mall purchases, shared apartments with roommates. The dramatic transformation coincided perfectly with Marcus's supposed promotion at Henderson Industries, which he had celebrated by purchasing Sarah's new Honda and taking the family to an expensive resort for their anniversary. Guilt gifts for starting an affair, paid for with money he had stolen to fund that same affair. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus. Working late again tonight. Beautiful. This Henderson situation is getting more complicated by the day. Don't wait up for me. I love you so much. She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, love you too. Be safe. The lie felt bitter and false in her mouth, but maintaining investigative cover was essential to gathering complete evidence. Marcus had absolutely no idea that Detective Sarah Mitchell was building a comprehensive criminal case against him, documenting his theft, and preparing to destroy the carefully constructed double life he had built on systematic deception. Tomorrow, she would begin the process of dismantling 20 years of marriage with the same methodical precision she used to solve complex fraud cases. The only difference was that this time, she was both the investigating officer and the primary victim. But Detective Sarah Mitchell had never lost a case in 15 years of police work, and she had no intention of starting now. 3 days later, Sarah was conducting routine surveillance outside Crystal's apartment building when she noticed something unusual about her target's behavior patterns. Instead of heading to her typical destinations, the expensive gym, luxury shopping districts, or trendy restaurants, Crystal emerged from the building at 9 a.m., wearing oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap, clearly attempting to avoid recognition. Sarah followed at a careful distance as Crystal drove to the medical district downtown, parking outside the Metropolitan Women's Health Center and hurrying inside with the nervous energy of someone who didn't want to be seen. This was the first time Sarah had observed her target trying to maintain a low profile, which immediately triggered her investigative instincts. Sarah positioned herself in the parking lot with a clear view of the building's entrance and settled in to wait. Her 15 years of police work had taught her that secretive medical appointments often revealed crucial information about suspects' motivations and future plans. After 90 minutes, Crystal emerged from the medical center carrying a small pharmacy bag and what appeared to be informational pamphlets. Even from across the parking lot, Sarah could see that her expression had changed dramatically. She looked excited, almost glowing with happiness. As Crystal walked past Sarah's surveillance position toward her BMW convertible, she was talking animatedly on her phone with barely contained enthusiasm. Mom, everything is absolutely perfect. The doctor says I'm 12 weeks along, and all the tests look completely normal and healthy. The baby is developing exactly like it should be, and I can't wait to tell Marcus tonight. He's going to be so incredibly excited. Tasha, 12 weeks pregnant, Sarah felt like someone had punched her directly in the solar plexus. She did quick mental calculations. The timing coincided perfectly with Marcus's supposed business trip to Chicago, the one where he had claimed to be in back-to-back meetings 18 hours a day with demanding corporate lawyers. Sarah continued following Crystal as she drove to a large pharmacy chain where she purchased prenatal vitamins, pregnancy supplements, and what appeared to be baby care guides. Next stop was a bookstore specializing in parenting resources, where Crystal spent an hour selecting pregnancy guides, baby name books, and early childhood development materials. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Marcus's mistress was carrying his child. Sarah pulled into an empty parking lot and sat in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what she had discovered. Not only was her husband systematically stealing money and conducting an extramarital affair, he was starting an entirely new family while maintaining the facade of their 20-year marriage. The betrayal cut deeper than anything she had experienced in her entire life. Marcus had always insisted that one child was enough for their family. When Emma was born 19 years ago, he had convinced Sarah that they should focus on providing the best possible life for their daughter rather than having additional children. He had even undergone a vasectomy, claiming he wanted to ensure they could concentrate their financial resources on Emma's education and future opportunities. Apparently, that vasectomy had been reversed at some point, and their carefully planned financial future had been redirected to fund Marcus's new life with a much younger woman. Sarah called Jake from her car, needing to hear a familiar voice before she completely lost her emotional composure. "Jake, it's Sarah. I need some professional advice on a case I'm working." "Sure, what's going on?" "You sound stressed." Hypothetically, if a suspect in a financial fraud investigation was also committing adultery and the other woman was pregnant with his child, would that affect the potential criminal charges? "Well, adultery isn't illegal in our jurisdiction, but if he's systematically using marital assets to support the pregnancy and the other woman's lifestyle, that could definitely be considered aggravated fraud with enhanced penalties." "Why are you asking? Please tell me this isn't related to your mysterious hypothetical case anymore." Sarah was quiet for so long that Jake finally spoke again, with growing concern in his voice. "Sarah, are you still there? Talk to me. She's pregnant. Jake, Marcus's mistress is pregnant with his child." "Oh, hell, Sarah. I'm so sorry. This is way beyond what anyone should have to deal with. 12 weeks along. The timing matches perfectly with his Chicago business trip, where he was supposedly in meetings around the clock. What are you planning to do with this information?" "I'm going to continue building my case methodically and professionally. Then I'm going to destroy him completely." "Sarah, as your partner and your friend, I have to ask, are you thinking about this situation clearly? This has become extremely personal, and personal cases can cloud professional judgment." "This was always personal, Jake, but now it's also criminal on multiple levels. He's been systematically stealing from our joint accounts to support another woman and their unborn child. That constitutes financial fraud, identity theft, and misappropriation of marital assets on a scale that requires serious legal consequences. Those are definitely serious criminal charges that could result in significant prison time. Marcus is a serious criminal who happens to be married to the detective investigating his crimes. That's his problem, not mine." After ending the call with Jake, Sarah drove home to find Marcus in their kitchen, making coffee and reviewing what appeared to be financial reports spread across their breakfast table. He looked up and smiled when she walked through the door, the same charming expression that had won her heart 21 years ago. "Hey, beautiful. How was your day? You look a little tired." "Educational and enlightening. How was your day at the office?" "Long and frustrating meetings about the Henderson merger timeline. But I actually have some potentially good news. It looks like this deal might close ahead of schedule. We could finish this entire project weeks earlier than originally planned." Sarah poured herself coffee and sat across from Marcus at the table, where they had shared thousands of meals and conversations over 2 decades of marriage. Her millionaire ex-husband looked relaxed and confident, probably because he believed his elaborate deception was working perfectly, and his wife remained completely ignorant of his double life. "Marcus, do you ever think about having another baby?" Marcus nearly choked on his coffee, coughing and sputtering as he tried to process her unexpected question. "Another baby, Sarah? We're in our 40s. Emma's already in college. Why would we possibly want to start over with an infant at this stage of our lives?" "I don't know. Maybe because children are incredible blessings. Maybe because we have the financial resources to provide an excellent life for another child. We've had this exact conversation multiple times over the years. Our family is absolutely perfect, exactly the way it is right now. But what if circumstances changed unexpectedly? What if someone got pregnant by accident?" Marcus's face went noticeably pale, and she could see genuine panic in his eyes. Sarah, what exactly are you trying to say here? Are you telling me that you're pregnant? The terror in his voice was unmistakable and revealing. The absolute last thing Marcus wanted was another child with his wife, when he was already expecting one with his mistress. No, I'm not pregnant. I'm just wondering hypothetically if you would be happy and excited if I was. Of course I would be thrilled and happy. I would be absolutely delighted. But his relief was obvious and poorly concealed, and his answer sounded rehearsed rather than genuine. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Crystal Summers. We need to talk urgently. I have important information about your husband that you need to know immediately. Sarah stared at the message in confusion and surprise. Why would Marcus's pregnant mistress want to communicate with her? Who's texting you? Marcus asked, attempting to see her phone screen. Work emergency. I need to go into the office for a few hours. On a Sunday evening. Financial crimes don't respect weekends or business hours. Sarah kissed Marcus goodbye with the same automatic gesture she had performed thousands of times over 20 years, and drove to the coffee shop address Crystal had provided. It was in a neighborhood where Sarah was unlikely to encounter anyone she knew professionally or socially. Crystal was already waiting when Sarah arrived, sitting in a corner booth wearing jeans and a sweatshirt instead of her usual designer clothing. Without professional makeup and styling, she looked younger and more vulnerable, more like the naive young woman she probably was underneath the sophisticated exterior Marcus had created for her. Mrs. Mitchell, thank you so much for coming. I know this must be incredibly weird for you. Why did you want to see me? Because I found out some things about Marcus that completely change everything I thought I knew about him. Things that you absolutely need to know. Sarah sat down across from Crystal, studying the young woman who had been sleeping with her husband for months while living off stolen marital assets. Up close, she could see the slight swell of early pregnancy beneath the loose sweatshirt. What kinds of things? He's been lying to both of us about everything. This entire time we've been together, he's been telling me that you and he were already getting divorced, that you both knew about our relationship and were just waiting for the right time to make it official. Sarah felt like someone had hit her with a baseball bat. He told you what? He said you had both agreed to an amicable divorce after Emma graduated from college, that you were basically just roommates going through the motions until then, and that I was helping him transition to his new life after the marriage officially ended. Our marriage isn't ending. I had no idea you existed until 4 days ago. Crystal's face crumpled with the realization of how completely she had been manipulated. Oh my God, I'm such a complete idiot. He played me totally and completely. You're pregnant with his child, 12 weeks along, and when I told him yesterday, he completely freaked out, said the timing was terrible, that he needed more time to figure things out with you first. But Mrs. Mitchell, he's been planning this pregnancy for months. What do you mean he's been planning it? He had his vasectomy reversed 6 months ago. He told me it was because he desperately wanted to start a family with me after you two got divorced. He said you never wanted more children, but he'd always regretted not having a son to carry on his family name. Sarah's entire world tilted sideways as she processed this information. Marcus had planned this pregnancy deliberately, lied systematically to both women, and stolen substantial amounts of money to fund his elaborate double life. The level of deception and manipulation was staggering. Crystal, why are you telling me all of this? Because I realize that if he's been lying to you about me and lying to me about you, then probably everything he's told both of us is complete bullshit. And Mrs. Mitchell, I think we might both be in serious danger. What kind of danger? I found some papers in his apartment, financial documents and legal papers that don't make any sense. And he's been asking me really strange questions about your work schedule, your cases, your partner at the police station. It's like he's planning something terrible. Sarah's detective instincts immediately went into high alert. What kinds of questions? About when you work late shifts, which cases you're currently investigating, whether you keep police files at your house, and he wanted to know specific details about your life insurance policy. Life insurance. Sarah's blood ran cold as ice water. In 15 years as a detective specializing in violent crimes, she had investigated enough murder cases to know that when cheating husbands started asking detailed questions about their wives' life insurance policies, those wives often ended up dead under mysterious circumstances. Crystal, I need you to tell me everything Marcus has said about me. about our marriage, about his future plans, and about your relationship. Everything, no matter how small or insignificant it might seem. For the next 3 hours, Crystal systematically revealed the scope of Marcus's manipulation and deception. He had been planning his exit strategy for over a year, methodically moving money offshore, creating false identities, establishing secret accounts, and setting up what appeared to be the perfect crime, the mysterious death of his police detective wife, leaving him free to inherit her substantial life insurance payout and start fresh with his pregnant young mistress. Sarah realized with growing horror that she wasn't just investigating financial fraud and marital infidelity, she was uncovering a carefully planned murder plot, and she was the intended victim. The hunt for justice had just become a fight for survival. Over the following week, Sarah conducted the most complex and dangerous investigation of her entire career, while maintaining the increasingly difficult facade of being an unsuspecting wife. She collaborated secretly with Crystal to gather evidence from inside Marcus's operation, effectively turning his pregnant mistress into her most valuable confidential informant. Crystal provided access to Marcus's secret apartment, the one he had been renting under a false identity just 3 blocks from her luxury building. Sarah's systematic search of the premises revealed the true scope of his criminal planning, detailed financial documents showing offshore accounts, multiple false identification cards, forged financial records, and comprehensive plans for liquidating assets and fleeing the country after Sarah's death. The murder plot was sophisticated, methodical, and absolutely chilling in its calculated cruelty. Marcus had spent months researching Sarah's active case files, studying the violent criminals she had helped convict, and identifying potential suspects who might want revenge against the detective who had put them behind bars. His plan was to make Sarah's death appear to be retaliation from one of her former cases, while he played the role of grieving husband collecting a $2 million life insurance payout. He showed me the actual policy documents, Crystal revealed during one of their clandestine meetings at a different coffee shop across town. He said after you were dead, we could move to some tropical island and raise our baby in paradise. He made it sound romantic and exciting, like we were going to have this perfect new life together. Did he ever specify exactly how I was supposed to die? He said it would have to look like a home invasion robbery gone wrong. Someone breaking into your house while you were alone, probably someone you had arrested and sent to prison. He said police detectives make a lot of dangerous enemies, so nobody would be surprised if one of them came after you for revenge. Sarah realized with growing alarm that Marcus had been systematically studying her case files, learning detailed information about the violent criminals she had investigated, and planning to frame one of them for her murder. This would create reasonable doubt about his own involvement while providing him with the perfect alibi. The financial evidence was equally damning and comprehensive. Marcus had systematically established offshore accounts in countries without extradition treaties, created multiple shell companies to hide asset transfers, and developed detailed plans for assuming a new identity after Sarah's death. He had been preparing his escape for over a year, using money stolen from their joint accounts to fund every aspect of his elaborate criminal scheme. But the most terrifying discovery came when Sarah conducted a covert search of Marcus's laptop while he was supposedly at work. Hidden in encrypted files, she found detailed surveillance reports documenting her daily routines, notes about her work schedule and case assignments, and photographs of her arriving at and leaving the police station. Marcus had been stalking his own wife for months, learning her patterns and habits, preparing for the perfect opportunity to have her killed. Sarah printed and photographed everything, creating multiple backup copies of evidence stored in different secure locations. She involved Jake in the investigation, finally admitting the full scope of what she had discovered about her husband's criminal activities. Sarah, you cannot continue staying in that house. This man is actively planning to murder you, and you're giving him daily opportunities to carry out his plan? I understand the risks, Jake, but I need more evidence before I can move openly. If I leave now or tip him off that I know what he's planning, he'll run immediately, and we'll never be able to arrest and prosecute him. I need to catch him in the act of attempting murder, not just planning it. What about protective custody? We can arrange for round-the-clock surveillance and protection. I'm a police detective with 15 years of experience. Jake, I can protect myself, and I want to catch him trying to kill me, not just thinking about it. The difference between planning a crime and attempting to commit it is the difference between a few years in prison and life without parole. Working closely with the district attorney's office, Sarah arranged a controlled operation designed to catch Marcus in the act of attempted murder while ensuring her safety. They installed hidden cameras throughout her house, placed tracking devices on all of Marcus's vehicles, and arranged for undercover surveillance teams to monitor the situation 24 hours a day. The plan was to allow Marcus to proceed with his murder plot while surrounding him with invisible law enforcement protection. They wanted to document his actual attempt to have Sarah killed, creating an airtight case for first-degree murder conspiracy. Crystal played her assigned role perfectly, encouraging Marcus to accelerate his timeline by expressing impatience with their secret relationship and demanding that he resolve the Sarah situation as quickly as possible. "When are you finally going to handle your wife problem?" she asked during a dinner conversation that police were secretly recording. "I'm starting to show more every week, and people are going to start asking questions about the baby's father." "Very soon," Marcus replied with chilling casualness. "I'm just waiting for the perfect opportunity. It has to look completely natural and beyond suspicion. What if she finds out about us before then?" "She won't. Sarah is too trusting and too focused on her work. She has absolutely no idea what's coming." Sarah listened to recordings of her husband casually discussing her murder like it was a routine business transaction, and felt a combination of rage and determination that surprised her with its intensity. Marcus had underestimated her intelligence, her investigative skills, and her capacity for survival. Those mistakes were going to cost him everything. The surveillance operation was now in place, and the trap was set. When Marcus made his move to have Sarah killed, law enforcement would be ready and waiting. Meanwhile, Crystal continued gathering evidence from Marcus's apartment, including detailed floor plans of Sarah's house, schedules of her daily movements, and research files on recently released criminals who could serve as scapegoats for the murder. "He's been planning this for almost a year," Crystal reported during one of their secret meetings. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm so sorry. If I had known what he was really planning to do—" "You couldn't have known, Crystal. Marcus is a master manipulator who spent 20 years fooling me. Don't blame yourself for being deceived by someone who made lying into an art form. What's going to happen to him when you arrest him? If we can prove attempted murder, conspiracy, and financial fraud, he's looking at life in prison without the possibility of parole. And what's going to happen to me? I accepted money that I knew was stolen, even if I didn't know it was stolen from you specifically." Sarah looked at the young woman who was carrying her husband's child, who had risked everything to expose his murder plot, who had chosen justice over personal comfort when it would have been easier to remain silent. "Crystal, you're going to be a witness for the prosecution. You're going to help us put him away forever." "Will I go to jail too?" "Not if you continue cooperating fully with our investigation. The district attorney has agreed to offer you complete immunity in exchange for your testimony against Marcus." Crystal started crying with relief and fear. "I'm going to be a single mother with no money, no skills, and no support system. Marcus promised me everything, and now I'm going to have nothing. You have something much more valuable than money. Crystal, you have integrity. You chose to do the right thing when it mattered most, even though it was difficult and scary." Sarah felt an unexpected sense of kinship with this young woman who had been manipulated and deceived by the same man. Marcus had lied to both of them, used both of them, and planned to destroy both their lives to serve his own selfish agenda. "We're going to get through this," Sarah told Crystal with conviction. "Both of us are going to survive this and build better lives." The next phase of the operation would test everything Sarah had learned about courage, survival, and the pursuit of justice. Marcus was planning to kill his wife, but Detective Sarah Mitchell was planning to catch a would-be murderer. And this time, the murderer happened to be her own husband. The opportunity Marcus had been waiting for finally presented itself on a Thursday evening in late October. Sarah was scheduled to work late reviewing case files for an upcoming trial, and Emma was staying at Northwestern for a special sorority recruitment event that would keep her on campus through the weekend. Marcus would have several uninterrupted hours alone in their house, perfect timing for staging a home invasion robbery that would leave his wife dead and him wealthy. What Marcus didn't know was that Sarah had deliberately provided him with false information about her work schedule. She wasn't actually working late at the police station. She was positioned 2 blocks from her own house, wearing a bulletproof vest and surrounded by an entire team of undercover officers waiting for her husband to attempt murder. Crystal had played her assigned role flawlessly, suggesting to Marcus that this particular evening might represent the perfect opportunity to handle their Sarah problem once and for all. She had expressed growing impatience with their secret relationship and increasing anxiety about people discovering her pregnancy before Marcus resolved his marital situation. At 8:15 p.m., Sarah's sophisticated home security system was disabled from inside the house. Marcus was home and preparing for whatever he had planned. At 8:30 p.m., a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up outside Sarah's house and parked directly in front, through high-definition surveillance cameras that Marcus didn't know existed. Police officers watched as he opened the front door and allowed two men to enter through the main entrance rather than forcing them to break in. Sarah's blood turned to ice water when she recognized one of the men, Bobby Torino, a convicted armed robber she had personally arrested and helped prosecute 3 years earlier. He had been released on parole just 6 months ago after serving his sentence for multiple violent felonies. Marcus had hired former criminals, people Sarah had sent to prison to murder her. This would ensure that her death looked like retaliation rather than domestic murder, providing Marcus with the perfect cover story and alibi. Through radio communication, Sarah watched as Marcus handed both men what appeared to be cash payments and pointed them toward the staircase leading to the master bedroom, where she would normally be sleeping at this time of night. "This is it," Jake's voice crackled through Sarah's earpiece. "All units move in immediately. Suspects are in the house with weapons and criminal intent." Sarah watched from her concealed position as police officers surrounded her home in a coordinated tactical operation. She could see Marcus through the front window, pacing nervously in the living room, while armed criminals searched upstairs for a wife who wasn't there. The arrests happened within minutes and were captured entirely on video surveillance. Bobby Torino and his accomplice were caught red-handed with weapons, cash payment from Marcus, and detailed written instructions for staging Sarah's murder to look like a random home invasion. Marcus was arrested in his own living room, still wearing the expensive business suit he had worn to work that morning, still playing the role of successful corporate executive, even as his carefully planned murder plot collapsed around him. Sarah entered her house through the front door as Marcus was being handcuffed in the same hallway where he had kissed her goodbye thousands of times over 20 years of marriage. "Sarah, what are you doing here? I thought you were working late at the police station tonight." "I was working, Marcus. I was working on arresting you for conspiracy to commit murder. This is obviously some kind of terrible mistake. Those men broke into our house. I was trying to call the police when you arrived. Marcus, we have audio recordings of you planning my murder. We have financial records of you paying these criminals. We have witness testimony from Crystal about your entire scheme, including your plans to flee the country after collecting my life insurance money." Marcus's face went completely white as he realized the scope of what had been discovered. "Crystal, what does she have to do with any of this? Your pregnant mistress helped us build this entire case against you. She's the one who warned us that you were planning to kill me. Sarah, I can explain everything that's happened. This whole situation has gotten completely out of control. You can explain it to your attorney during your arraignment." As police officers led Marcus toward the patrol car, he turned back to Sarah with the same charming smile that had won her heart 21 years ago, when they were young and supposedly in love. "Sarah, I love you more than anything in this world. You have to believe me. Everything I did was for us, for our future together. Everything you did was for yourself. Marcus, you wanted me dead so you could start over with a younger woman and collect $2 million in life insurance money. That's not true at all. Marcus, I'm a detective who specializes in financial fraud. I have recorded conversations, financial evidence, witness testimony, and video surveillance of you hiring criminals to murder me. I have everything." For the first time in their 20-year marriage, Marcus Mitchell had no smooth explanation, no charming deflection, no way to manipulate the situation in his favor. He was caught completely, and he knew it. "I never actually wanted to hurt you," he said quietly as the police officers guided him toward the patrol car. "You wanted to murder me, Marcus. I just wanted to be free to start my new life. Now you're free to spend the rest of your life in a prison cell." As the police car pulled away from their house with her millionaire ex-husband in the back seat, Sarah stood in the driveway of the home they had shared for 15 years and realized she felt relief rather than heartbreak. The man she had loved and trusted for 2 decades had never really existed. Marcus Mitchell, devoted husband and father, had been a fictional character he created to hide his true nature while planning the ultimate betrayal. The real Marcus was a narcissistic abuser who viewed people as obstacles to eliminate rather than human beings deserving of love and respect. Jake approached as the crime scene investigation team finished documenting evidence throughout the house. "You okay, Sarah?" "Better than okay. Justice has been served, and I'm still alive." "What happens now?" "Now I file for divorce, recover all our stolen assets, and start building a completely new life. A life where I'm not married to someone who wants me dead." "And what about Crystal and the baby?" "Crystal made the right choice when it mattered most. She's young, she's intelligent, and she chose truth over comfortable lies. The baby will grow up knowing that their mother was brave enough to choose justice over personal convenience." Sarah looked at her house, the house Marcus's salary had paid for, the house where he had planned her murder, the house that would soon belong entirely to her after the divorce settlement. For the first time in years, she felt completely safe in her own home. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Emma. "Mom, I saw the news alerts about Dad's arrest. Are you okay? Do you need me to come home immediately?" Sarah typed back, "I'm perfectly safe, sweetheart. Justice has been served, and we're going to be fine. Better than fine. Actually," her daughter responded immediately, "I love you, Mom. I'm proud of you for being so brave." Sarah smiled as she walked back into her house, knowing that tomorrow would be the first day of her new life, a life built on truth instead of lies, safety instead of danger, and authentic relationships instead of calculated manipulation. The trial of Marcus Mitchell began 8 months later and immediately became a media sensation throughout the region. The story of a millionaire executive attempting to murder his police detective wife captured public attention and dominated news cycles for weeks. Local television stations ran nightly coverage with headlines like "Corporate Executive Plots Wife's Murder" and "Detective Solves Her Own Attempted Murder Case." National news programs picked up the story as an example of domestic violence escalating to attempted murder among wealthy professionals. Sarah testified for 4 grueling days, presenting comprehensive evidence of financial fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and systematic domestic abuse through financial control and manipulation. The prosecution's case was overwhelming and methodical recorded conversations between Marcus and Crystal, detailed financial records showing systematic theft, witness testimony from multiple sources, and actual video surveillance of Marcus hiring criminals to kill his wife. Marcus's high-priced defense team, funded by liquidating his remaining corporate assets, attempted to portray him as a desperate man driven to temporary insanity by the pressures of a failing marriage and demanding career. They argued that he had never intended to actually harm Sarah, that his conversations with Crystal about murder were merely fantasy, and that his hiring of Bobby Torino was an elaborate bluff designed to scare his wife rather than kill her. The defense strategy completely collapsed under cross-examination when prosecutors presented detailed evidence of Marcus's year-long planning process, his systematic movement of assets offshore, his creation of false identities, and his extensive research into Sarah's active case files to identify potential scapegoats for her murder. Crystal's testimony proved particularly devastating to Marcus's defense. 8 months pregnant and visibly uncomfortable on the witness stand. She described in detail how Marcus had manipulated her with elaborate lies about his marriage, detailed promises of their future together, and specific plans for Sarah's death. "He told me that killing his wife was the only way we could be together as a real family," Crystal testified, her voice trembling with emotion. "He made it sound like she was the only obstacle to our happiness, not like he was planning to murder an innocent person who had never done anything wrong to either of us." The defense attorney attempted to discredit Crystal as a bitter mistress, seeking revenge against a man who had rejected her. But her cooperation with police from the moment she discovered Marcus's murder plot made her credibility unassailable. Bobby Torino and his accomplice had already pled guilty to conspiracy charges in exchange for reduced sentences and testified against Marcus in explicit detail. They described how he had approached them with the murder contract, providing detailed information about Sarah's schedule, specific instructions for making the crime appear to be retaliation, and substantial cash payments for their services. He said his wife was a cop who had sent a lot of people to prison, so nobody would be surprised if one of them came after her for revenge. Torino testified. He gave us floor plans of their house, told us exactly when she'd be alone, and promised another $50,000 after the job was done. The financial evidence presented by prosecutors was equally compelling and comprehensive. Expert witnesses demonstrated that Marcus had systematically stolen over $300,000 from joint marital accounts, created multiple shell companies to hide asset transfers, established offshore accounts in countries without extradition treaties, and developed detailed plans for assuming a new identity after Sarah's death and his collection of her life insurance payout. Marcus made the decision to testify in his own defense against the strong advice of his legal team. He attempted to charm the jury with the same manipulative charisma that had worked on Sarah for 20 years. But his explanations fell apart completely under aggressive cross-examination by experienced prosecutors. Mr. Mitchell, you claim to love your wife, but you hired armed criminals to break into your house and kill her while she slept? I was confused and under enormous pressure. I wasn't thinking clearly about the consequences of my actions. Pressure caused you to plan murder for over a year. I never actually intended for anyone to get seriously hurt. You paid $50,000 to have your wife killed, but you never intended for anyone to get hurt. I thought they would just scare her, maybe rough her up a little bit. Mr. Mitchell, Bobby Torino testified that you specifically instructed him to make sure your wife was dead, not injured. How do you explain that testimony? Marcus had no credible answer. His charm and manipulation tactics, so effective in personal relationships and corporate environments, were completely useless against experienced prosecutors armed with recorded evidence and detailed financial documentation. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges: conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, attempted murder, financial fraud, identity theft, domestic abuse through financial control, and witness intimidation. Marcus was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the judge read the sentence, he turned to look at Sarah one final time, but she met his gaze with steady composure, feeling nothing but relief that justice had finally been served. The defendant systematically betrayed every promise he made to his wife, stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from their joint accounts, and planned her murder with the cold calculation of a professional criminal, the judge stated during sentencing. This court finds that Marcus Mitchell represents a clear and ongoing danger to society and shall spend the remainder of his natural life in state prison. After the trial concluded, Sarah stood on the courthouse steps surrounded by Jake, Crystal, the prosecuting attorneys, and members of the media. Reporters shouted questions about how it felt to solve her own attempted murder case and whether she planned to continue working in law enforcement. Justice doesn't depend on who the victim happens to be, Sarah told the assembled media. Crime is crime, whether it's committed by a stranger or someone you trust completely. The law applies equally to everyone, regardless of their wealth, social status, or professional position. Crystal had given birth to a healthy daughter 2 months earlier, a beautiful baby girl who would grow up knowing that her mother had chosen courage over comfort when it mattered most. What's next for you, Miss Summers? A reporter asked Crystal. I'm enrolled in the criminal justice program at the community college. Mrs. Mitchell inspired me to believe that women can be strong enough to seek justice, even when it requires making difficult choices. Sarah felt genuinely proud of Crystal's transformation from naive mistress to courageous witness to determined student. The young woman had discovered inner strength she never knew she possessed and was using it to build a better future for herself and her daughter. Detective Mitchell, will you continue working in financial fraud investigation? Yes, but I'm also starting a private consulting practice to help other women recognize the warning signs of financial abuse in their relationships. Too many women ignore red flags because they want to trust their partners. I want to help them understand that love should never require ignoring your instincts or compromising your financial security. The reporters asked about her divorce settlement, her future plans, and whether she felt bitter about 20 years of deception and betrayal. I'm not bitter, Sarah said with conviction. I'm grateful. Grateful that I had the professional skills to investigate this case. Grateful for law enforcement colleagues who supported me throughout this ordeal, and grateful that justice ultimately prevailed. Some women in my situation wouldn't have survived. I did, and I'm going to use that survival to help others. As the media crowd dispersed and people began returning to their normal lives, Jake walked Sarah to her car in the courthouse parking lot. "How are you really doing?" "Sarah, better than I ever expected. For the first time in years, I feel like my authentic self again. Not the version of myself that Marcus wanted me to be, but the real me." What does the real Sarah Mitchell want to do with the rest of her life? Sarah looked at the city skyline, where she had built her career, raised her daughter, and survived an attempted murder planned by her own husband. The real me wants to keep fighting for justice. The real me wants to help other women recognize narcissistic abuse before it escalates to violence. The real me wants to build a life based on truth and authenticity instead of lies and manipulation. Sounds like an excellent plan. It is. And Jake, thank you for believing me when this whole nightmare started. Thank you for treating my case like it mattered. Your case mattered because you matter. Sarah, don't ever forget that. As Sarah drove away from the courthouse toward her house, the house that now belonged entirely to her, she realized that surviving Marcus's betrayal and attempted murder had taught her something invaluable about her own strength and resilience. She was stronger than she had ever imagined, and she deserved a life built on honesty, respect, and genuine love rather than manipulation and control. Her millionaire ex-husband was in prison where he belonged, serving a life sentence for his crimes. Her daughter was proud of her mother's courage and strength. Crystal was building a new life based on her own integrity rather than dependence on manipulative men. And Detective Sarah Mitchell was ready to start the next chapter of her life, a chapter where she was the author of her own story rather than a character in someone else's deception. 18 months after Marcus's conviction, Sarah sat in her spacious new office reviewing case files for Mitchell Investigations, the specialized consulting firm she had established to help women recognize and escape financial abuse in their marriages and relationships. The office space was significantly smaller than her former workspace at the police station, but it belonged entirely to her. Every piece of furniture, every computer, every law book had been purchased with money she had earned through her own efforts rather than stolen from joint accounts. Her client roster included prominent divorce attorneys, women's shelters, domestic violence prevention organizations, and individual women who suspected their partners were systematically stealing from them or preparing to abandon them financially. Word had spread rapidly through legal and social service communities that Detective Sarah Mitchell, the woman who had solved her own attempted murder case, possessed unique expertise in identifying and documenting financial abuse before it escalated to violence. "Mrs. Patterson, I completely understand your concern about your husband's secretive behavior regarding your joint finances," Sarah said to her current client, a woman whose story sounded disturbingly familiar. "Can you tell me specifically what changes you've noticed in his financial habits over the past few months? He says I don't need to worry about money anymore, that managing finances is his responsibility as the husband, but I found credit card statements hidden in his office for accounts I didn't know existed. How long has this secretive behavior been going on? I think it started gradually over several years, but it's gotten much worse recently. He's become really controlling about spending and gets angry if I ask questions about where our money's going." Sarah recognized the classic pattern: immediately financial control disguised as protection, isolation presented as love, and systematic theft masked as responsible money management. Marcus had employed identical tactics during their marriage, and she had rationalized them away for years. "Mrs. Patterson, you were absolutely right to trust your instincts and seek professional help. Let's review the evidence you've gathered, and then I'll help you develop a plan to protect your assets and document any illegal activity." Sarah's new career proved more fulfilling than police work had ever been. She was still investigating complex crimes and gathering evidence against financial predators, but now she was also preventing crimes from occurring and helping women escape dangerous situations before they escalated to violence. Her phone rang during the lunch break, and Emma's name appeared on the screen. Her daughter was calling from her senior year at Northwestern, where she was completing a double major in criminal justice and psychology. "Mom, I wanted to tell you that I've been accepted to law school." "Emma, that's absolutely wonderful. Which schools?" "I got into Northwestern, University of Chicago, and Georgetown. I'm leaning toward Georgetown because they have an excellent program in domestic violence prosecution." Sarah felt an overwhelming surge of pride and emotion. Her daughter had chosen to dedicate her career to protecting other women from the kind of violence Sarah had experienced. I'm so incredibly proud of you, sweetheart. I learned from watching you that fighting for justice isn't just a job, it's a calling. You survived something that could have destroyed you, and then you used that experience to help other people. That's the kind of lawyer I want to be. You're going to change so many lives. Emma, I hope so. Oh, and Mom, I also wanted to tell you that I've been seeing someone. His name is David, and he's a social work major who wants to work with children from abusive families. Sarah smiled, thinking about how her daughter had learned to choose partners based on character and values, rather than superficial charm and financial success. I'd love to meet him sometime. He's actually really excited to meet you. He says you're his hero for exposing financial abuse and helping other women protect themselves. After ending the call with Emma, Sarah returned to reviewing case files and preparing for the afternoon's client consultations. 3 new cases this week: a doctor whose husband had been moving their money to offshore accounts, a teacher whose partner was systematically destroying her credit, and a small business owner whose spouse was stealing from her company to fund his gambling addiction. Her success had attracted attention from national media organizations and advocacy groups. She had been featured in magazines as an example of transforming personal trauma into professional purpose. And she regularly spoke at conferences about recognizing the warning signs of financial abuse in relationships. The phone rang again, and this time Crystal's name appeared on the screen. The young woman had become an unlikely friend and ally over the past year and a half. Sarah, I wanted to give you some exciting news. I just got accepted to law school too. Crystal, that's fantastic. Which school? State University? They have an excellent victim advocacy program, and they offered me a partial scholarship based on my community college grades and my volunteer work at the women's shelter. I'm so proud of how far you've come. I couldn't have done any of it without your example and encouragement. You showed me that women can be strong enough to seek justice, even when it requires making really difficult choices. Crystal's transformation over the past 18 months had been remarkable and inspiring. From naive mistress to courageous witness to dedicated student and single mother, she had discovered inner strength and moral courage she never knew she possessed. How's baby Sophie doing? She's perfect, walking everywhere now and getting into absolutely everything. Sometimes I look at her and can't believe she's half Marcus, because she's so sweet and innocent and loving. She's half you too, Crystal, and you chose courage over comfort when it mattered most. That's the legacy she'll inherit from her mother. I'm going to make sure she grows up knowing her own worth and understanding that she never needs a man to take care of her, financially or emotionally. After the call with Crystal, Sarah reflected on how dramatically life had changed since that evening, 18 months ago when she first discovered Marcus's betrayal. Her marriage was over, but she had discovered that she was happier living authentically alone than she had ever been while living a lie with someone else. The divorce settlement had been extremely favorable. She had kept their house, recovered most of the stolen money through asset forfeiture, and received substantial ongoing financial support from Marcus's frozen corporate assets. Financial independence after 50 had given her a freedom she had never imagined possible. Jake stopped by her office at closing time, a weekly tradition they had maintained since Sarah left the police force to start her own practice. How's the private investigation business treating you? I have more clients than I can handle, which unfortunately means there are a lot of women being financially abused by their partners, but now they have somewhere to turn for expert help. True, I'm actually thinking about expanding the practice, maybe hiring other investigators who specialize in domestic financial crimes and training them in my methods. Sounds like Mitchell Investigations is evolving into something much bigger than just a consulting firm. I want to create a model that other cities can adopt and replicate: women supporting women, helping each other recognize financial abuse and escape before it escalates to violence. You're changing lives every day. Sarah, my life got changed first, in the most traumatic way possible. Now I'm using that experience to help others avoid the same trauma. As Jake left and Sarah locked up her office for the evening, she realized she was genuinely looking forward to going home. Not because someone was waiting for her, but because home had become a place of peace and authenticity rather than performance and deception. Her house felt completely different without Marcus's presence. Lighter, more honest, more genuinely comfortable. She had redecorated using her own taste and preferences rather than trying to please someone who had been planning to kill her. That evening, Sarah poured herself a glass of wine and sat on her back porch, watching the sunset paint her neighborhood in golden autumn light. For 20 years, she had shared this view with a man who had seen her as an obstacle to eliminate rather than a person to cherish and protect. Now she shared it with no one, and it felt absolutely perfect. Her phone buzzed with a text message from a new potential client. Mrs. Mitchell, I think my husband is stealing from our business accounts and planning to leave me with nothing. Can you help me investigate and protect myself? Sarah smiled and typed back, I can definitely help you. Let's schedule a consultation as soon as possible. Justice wasn't just about putting criminals in prison, though that was certainly important. Justice was also about empowering victims to recognize their own worth, protect their financial interests, and build lives based on truth and authenticity rather than manipulation and control. Sarah had learned that lesson through the most painful experience of her life, but she was grateful for the knowledge because it had saved her life and was now saving other women's lives too. Her transformation from victim to survivor, to advocate to successful entrepreneur, proved that midlife crisis could become midlife opportunity when approached with courage and determination. She hadn't just survived Marcus's betrayal and attempted murder. She had used those experiences to create something meaningful and valuable for other women facing similar challenges. At 54 years old, Detective Sarah Mitchell was just beginning the most important work of her life. 2 years later, Sarah sat in the same corner booth at Romano's coffee house, where she had first discovered Marcus's betrayal and began the investigation that would ultimately save her life. But today she wasn't there as a victim or even as a survivor. She was meeting with Senator Patricia Williams, who wanted to discuss legislation requiring financial literacy education for women entering marriage. Sarah, your expertise in financial abuse cases has become nationally recognized, Senator Williams said, reviewing a folder of legislative proposals. We want to create federal programs that help women identify warning signs before they become victims. What specific types of programs are you considering? Mandatory financial disclosure requirements for marriage licenses, educational seminars about joint account protection, and training programs for law enforcement officers to recognize domestic financial crimes before they escalate to violence. Sarah's consulting firm had grown far beyond her original expectations. She now employed 6 other investigators, maintained offices in 3 different cities, and provided training programs for police departments, divorce attorneys, and women's advocacy organizations throughout the region. Her reputation had spread through legal and law enforcement communities nationwide. She was regularly invited to speak at conferences, contribute to academic research about financial abuse, and consult on high-profile cases involving wealthy individuals who used money as a weapon against their spouses. I'm particularly interested in the law enforcement training component, Sarah said. Most officers don't recognize financial abuse as a precursor to physical violence, so they miss opportunities to intervene before someone gets seriously hurt or killed. Exactly. We want to create protocols that treat systematic financial control as a form of domestic violence requiring immediate intervention. After the meeting with Senator Williams, Sarah drove across town to Northwestern University, where Emma was graduating from law school with highest honors and had already accepted a position with the district attorney's office specializing in domestic violence prosecution. The graduation ceremony took place on a beautiful spring afternoon, with families celebrating their children's achievements under bright blue skies and blooming trees. Sarah watched with overwhelming pride as her daughter received multiple awards for academic excellence and community service. Mom, I want you to know that everything I've accomplished is because of your example, Emma said during the family reception following the ceremony. Watching you survive Dad's betrayal and transform that experience into a career helping other women taught me that we can choose to use our pain to help others rather than letting it destroy us. You're going to be an incredible prosecutor, my sweetheart. I hope so. I want to put guys like Dad in prison where they belong, and I want to help their victims rebuild their lives with dignity and financial security. Sarah felt an almost overwhelming sense of gratitude for how her daughter had processed their family's trauma. Instead of becoming cynical about relationships or bitter about men, Emma had chosen to dedicate her career to protecting other women from similar experiences. Oh, and Mom, I want you to officially meet David. Emma's boyfriend approached with a warm smile and confident handshake. He was exactly the kind of man Sarah had hoped her daughter would choose: intelligent, compassionate, and genuinely interested in using his social work skills to help vulnerable children. Mrs. Mitchell, it's such an honor to finally meet you. Your work has inspired so many people who are committed to ending domestic violence. Thank you, David. I understand you work with children from abusive families. Yes, I coordinate programs that help kids process trauma and develop healthy relationship skills so they don't repeat their parents' patterns. Sarah realized that both Emma and David had chosen careers focused on breaking cycles of abuse and violence. They represented hope for future generations who might grow up understanding that love should never involve control, manipulation, or fear. After the graduation celebration, Sarah drove to her evening appointment with a new client whose case reminded her why her work remained critically important. Dr. Jennifer Chen was a successful surgeon whose husband had convinced her to let him manage their finances while she focused on her demanding medical career. I trusted him completely for 15 years, Dr. Chen explained during their consultation. He said I didn't need to worry about money because he was handling everything. But last week I discovered he's moved over $1 million to accounts I can't access. What made you decide to investigate his financial activities? He started pressuring me to increase our life insurance coverage and asking detailed questions about my work schedule. I'm a trauma surgeon. I've seen enough domestic violence cases to recognize the warning signs. Sarah felt a familiar surge of determination and purpose. Dr. Chen's story could easily have ended with her mysterious death in a staged accident, leaving her husband wealthy and free to start over. Instead, her medical training had taught her to recognize danger signs and seek help before it was too late. Dr. Chen, you made exactly the right decision to investigate and protect yourself. Let's review the evidence you've gathered, and then we'll develop a comprehensive plan to recover your assets and document any criminal activity. After the consultation, Sarah reflected on how her life had evolved since that traumatic evening when she first realized Marcus was planning to kill her. The betrayal and attempted murder had nearly destroyed her, but surviving those experiences had taught her invaluable lessons about strength, resilience, and the importance of supporting other women. Her phone rang as she was preparing to leave the office. It was Crystal, calling with exciting news about her law school graduation and job offer. Sarah, I wanted to tell you that I passed the bar exam and got hired by the public defender's office. Crystal, that's absolutely wonderful. You've worked so hard for this. I'm going to specialize in representing women who kill their abusive partners in self-defense. I want to make sure they get fair trials and appropriate sentences instead of being treated like criminals for protecting themselves. You're going to save so many lives and change so many outcomes for women who had no other choice. I learned from you that sometimes the worst thing that happens to us becomes the door to the best thing we can do for others. After ending the call, Sarah gathered her files and prepared to go home to the house that had once been a crime scene, but was now a sanctuary. The master bedroom where Marcus had planned for her to die had been completely redecorated and now served as her home office, where she worked on cases that helped other women avoid similar fates. As she drove through her neighborhood toward home, Sarah's phone rang one final time. The caller ID showed Jake's number. Sarah, I have a proposition that might interest you. I'm listening. The department wants to create a specialized unit focused entirely on domestic financial crimes. They want you to design the training protocols, supervise the investigators, and serve as the primary expert witness for complex cases. That sounds like exactly the kind of work I was meant to do. It would be contract work, so you could maintain your private practice while also influencing how law enforcement handles these cases on a systemic level. Sarah felt excitement building as she considered the opportunity. Training police officers to recognize financial abuse, developing protocols for early intervention, and serving as an expert witness in cases where women's lives hung in the balance. It was the logical next step in her evolution from victim to advocate to system reformer. Let's set up a meeting to discuss the details. I was hoping you'd say that. As Sarah pulled into her driveway and looked at the house that had once symbolized Marcus's deception, but now represented her independence and authenticity, she realized her journey wasn't ending. It was expanding into something even more meaningful and impactful. From victim to survivor to successful entrepreneur, to legislative consultant, to law enforcement reformer, she was becoming a voice for women who had been silenced by financial abuse and a force for changing systems that failed to protect them. Her story had begun with devastating betrayal and nearly ended with murder, but it was concluding with justice, empowerment, and hope for countless other women who would benefit from the path she had carved through her own pain and determination. Detective Sarah Mitchell had solved the case of her own marriage and her own attempted murder. Now she was helping other women solve their cases before it became too late to escape with their lives and their dignity intact. In the quiet comfort of her peaceful home, Sarah raised her evening glass of wine in a toast to herself and to all the women she had helped and would continue to help. To justice, to truth, to financial independence, and to women supporting women in the fight for authentic, safe, and honest lives. The sound of her own voice, confident and strong and unafraid, was the most beautiful music she had ever heard. Her phone buzzed one final time with a text message from a woman she had never met. Mrs. Mitchell, I saw your interview on the news about recognizing financial abuse. I think my husband is stealing from our accounts and planning to leave me with nothing. Can you help me investigate before it's too late? Sarah smiled as she typed her response. I can absolutely help you. Call my office first thing tomorrow morning, and we'll start building your case immediately. You're going to be fine, stronger than you know, and more powerful than he thinks. Outside her window, the city lights twinkled like stars against the darkness, and Sarah knew that somewhere in that vast urban landscape, other women were discovering their own strength, recognizing their own worth, and finding the courage to seek the justice they deserved. And Detective Sarah Mitchell would be there to help them find it, one case at a time, for as long as her strength and determination could serve the cause of justice and truth.